Around Joe podcast, where we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. On this edition of the All Around Joe podcast, I am talking with Dani Urcuyo, sorry if I messed that up, Dani, of SteadyMD. So Dani has been a functional medicine practitioner for some time now. He is also a CrossFitter. He's actually been to the CrossFit Games on a team, and they're doing some really, really cool stuff at SteadyMD. So I'm excited to get to talk with Dani today and really figure out what SteadyMD is all about, where they're going, and how you can benefit from using SteadyMD. So this show is brought to you by the Get Better Project. If you guys would like to get yourself some at-home style, CrossFit style coaching and training, check out thegetbetterproject.com, click on programs there, and you'll see their daily programs that have full functional gym programs, bodyweight programs, and kettlebell programs that can get you going today, as well as a community, nutrition review, all of that fun stuff. So head over to thegetbetterproject.com and check it out. Oh, and if you would like to try SteadyMD, go to allaroundjoe.com/SteadyMD. That's allaroundjoe.com/SteadyMD. All right, here's my podcast with Dani from SteadyMD. I hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go. Dani, how's it going today, man?
Good. How are you?
I am great. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig in. So let's go ahead and do that, man. I love to get to know participants, and we're obviously here, to talk about you, to talk about SteadyMD and like how that's helping the world. But
sure,
who are you? That's what I want to kick this off with. So like, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? How did that get you into CrossFit? How did that get you into medicine? Did you have any mentors along the way? All that stuff.
Oh yeah, sure. I grew up in Germany. My mom was a nurse in Germany. My dad actually was from Nicaragua, or is from Nicaragua. Moved to Germany to study engineering. Met my mom, kind of grew up there, and then moved to the States when I was 7 because my dad ended up getting a job for an automotive company here. So I moved to Detroit. Kind of grew up in Detroit. Was kind of a traditional skateboarding kid. Built a lot of ramps. Got all the traditional, injuries associated with skateboarding and snowboarding, and got really into that, but was also really into music.
Okay.
So did that. Actually wanted to be an opera singer at one point. So kind of all throughout high school, I was, singing opera and going to the skate park. So it's kind of an interesting combination. But yeah, then I got interested in medicine. Because, I was trying to choose a major once I got to college, and there was the option to do, voice performance, and then also, to do other majors as well. So I was thinking about kind of doing one or the other, and shadowed one of my dad's friends who was a cardiologist, and then kind of fell in love with medicine. And then didn't really know kind of what I wanted to do in terms of in medicine for quite a while. And around that time, while I was trying to figure all that stuff out, I got introduced to CrossFit too. And I started going to our local affiliate, Hyperfit, which unfortunately is no more. But Doug Chapman was an outstanding coach, and kind of took me and my wife, and at that time my wife and I had met. It was back, I think it was the beginning of my junior year of college. We ended up starting doing CrossFit, which was really fun. It was about, maybe a couple miles away from campus. I still remember kind of riding our bikes in the snow to try to get there because we didn't have a car. So we ended up going to the 5:30 class and just started training and ended up really being passionate about it, and then kind of became a bigger part of our life, and we started competing. And around that time, I had kind of decided I wanted to go into medicine, and then ended up going to Cleveland for medical school at the Cleveland Clinic. And then finally, as I was kind of going through my training, I had a little bit of an identity crisis in terms of, it's not an identity crisis, I guess kind of what everyone goes through and they're trying to pick their specialty. But I was really into transplant surgery.
Okay.
So because it combined an interest of mine, which was immunology, which I did a little bit of coursework in undergrad, and also kind of the doing aspect of things. And really got frustrated with the fact that, a lot of these things that people were experiencing, we could prevent.
Mm-hmm.
So then I took a trip with my family to Nicaragua, where my dad's from, like I mentioned. And I saw that the people that were there were suffering from the exact same diseases as people are suffering from here in the States. And it got me thinking. So if I really want to make a big change and prevent disease and embody all the things that, we see happen in the CrossFit gym all the time, which is, reversing these chronic diseases that we're constantly told are irreversible, then I really needed to choose a different path. And then I decided to, eventually go with family medicine. And as I was kind of going through that process, I was also very frustrated by the medical system, in that a lot of the framework of the structure in which we practice medicine is around kind of efficiency. And as a product of that setup, it's all about prescribing medications and procedures, and there really isn't enough time to practice true medicine, the reversal of disease. So at around that time, I got exposed to a concept called functional medicine. Dr. Mark Hyman, who at the time was the chair of the Institute of Functional Medicine, came to the Cleveland Clinic and gave an announcement and said, hey, we're launching this Center for Functional Medicine, the first academic center to do functional medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, and here's what it is. So he explained the methodology behind that, which is trying to get to the root cause of issues and looking at the person in a holistic way, and using the best of medical science regardless of where it comes from. So alternative medicine, whatever, conventional medicine, and really using the most cutting edge data that we have to really cure disease. Which is honestly, when I say it like that, it sounds ridiculous, because functional medicine really is just good medicine. So then I got really into this whole concept of functional medicine. It was kind of a light bulb moment, because it was this beautiful synergy of what I had learned in CrossFit and through the L1 seminar, and later through other seminars as well, and then what I learned in medical school. So it provided me with these two amazing opportunities to express kind of what I had learned, through CrossFit and then through functional medicine. So then I started to practice kind of that style of care, even in residency, and I ended up going into family medicine residency. And then around that time, SteadyMD was actually looking for physicians and had reached out to Julie. And then Julie was at I think she was in her beginning of her first year. Maybe she was still in medical school. No, it was her first year, I think, of residency. And at that point, she wasn't quite in her training where she could see people independently yet. She said, oh, why don't you talk to my husband? So then I talked to them. They're like, hey, we want to set up a practice for CrossFit enthusiasts, for people to do functional fitness. And I said, okay, that sounds amazing. That's exactly what I want to do. So I ended up moonlighting for them when I was still a resident, and kind of helped them develop that practice. And now I'm graduated from residency, and I work for SteadyMD full time. I have an office, a brick and mortar office, as you can see here in Cleveland, Ohio, at Black Flag Athletics, which is our local CrossFit affiliate. So I see people virtually all over the country through the SteadyMD platform, and then local SteadyMD patients I see in person too. That's kind of where I am now.
That's super cool. What made you want to be a doctor in the first place?
It sounds so cheesy. I mean, I just wanted to help people, right? I was just fascinated with science and biology, and in particular immunology.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked working with people. Being with people energizes me. I'm definitely an extrovert. So it kind of combined all those different things into one profession.
Okay, very cool. And was skateboarding skateboarding and snowboarding, so board sports, were those the only sports that you did growing up?
Yeah, I played some like pickup soccer, but skateboarding was my major sport, which now in hindsight, I'm kind of really paying the price for.
Really?
But orthopedically, but it was awesome. It was it's a fantastic sport. I loved it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And when you were growing up, I'm just curious, like, were your parents pushing you towards a medical career? Or, a lot of times we have these influencers on our lives, and I think it's really interesting to know, like, how that path was molded.
Yeah, no. So as I mentioned, I was really into music, and I think part of the big influence came from my parents. Actually, I guess the biggest thing they pushed me into is music, because
Okay.
my grandparents were very musical. And I just started, music lessons at, I think I was 3 years old. And my uncle was kind of I would say probably pretty successful DJ in electronic music too.
Hmm.
And he influenced me as well, just from kind of an electronic music perspective. And then I was exposed to, classical music. So I got a nice exposure to music in the different genres. And then my parents they really didn't mind, honestly. They were like, do whatever you want, but music sounds like it's a big passion of yours. Definitely pursue it. As long as you can, it's not about money. As long as you can sustain yourself, we don't care what you do. But they also wanted me to kind of see what else was out there beyond
Hmm.
music. So they kind of, said, oh, why don't you just hang out with our friend here for an afternoon, with no intention of like, pushing me that way. But I ended up loving it.
Cool. And do you still
Yeah.
do any music now?
I do, but not in the sense of like composing or anything like that. Now I just like enjoy listening and like mixing electronic music. So I
Cool.
just have like a nice setup at home with some Pioneer CDJs and stuff, and just just for fun, and
Nice.
like hoping to I'm probably be DJing the open here, but kind of fun things
Cool.
like that. Yeah.
That sounds like fun. When you were going
Yeah.
through med school, did you get any or did you feel any pushback by the functional medicine direction?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I still get a lot of pushback because it's such a different approach.
Mhm.
Um, you know, functional medicine, I guess, in the term that in the way that it's perceived, uses a lot of kind of I guess I don't want to say it is non-traditional. So they're non-traditional tests. So a lot of like stool tests,
Mhm.
some hormone testing, and a lot of conventional labs that are perceived or viewed at in a different way, like maybe with different reference ranges compared to conventional reference ranges. And that's, some people argue that there's not a lot of evidence, like randomized controlled trial, kind of standard medical research for this kind of thing. But I had the same kind of suspicions, or kind of I was kind of had the same concerns as a lot of other folks as well. But then when I, rotated through some functional medicine clinics where I saw these tests being used, and that they were helpful in making diagnoses where conventional medicine really wasn't able to help, it made me a much bigger believer of this style of medicine. And I think the pushback comes mostly because of um, a lack of knowledge, more that people don't really see. They don't, for one, they don't see the data, and the data is coming. There's lots of studies that are being done now, especially at the Cleveland Clinic, to really validate the methodology for functional medicine. But these people on the outside, they don't necessarily see what's going on in the clinic and how people are really helped from the perspective of even these chronic conditions that oftentimes modern medicine, or conventional medicine for that matter, doesn't really have any answers to. So we're talking about things like controlling autoimmune disease without these harsh medications, and potentially even reversing some chronic conditions that are thought to be irreversible.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the functional medicine, what you're describing, like makes so much sense versus the conventional medicine. So it's
Yeah.
always surprising to me that when you go to your, general physician or whatnot, they're not
Yeah.
thinking about it that way. So, I mean,
Yeah.
is that surprising to you as well? Like, why aren't you thinking about what is actually causing things?
Yeah, it's funny because, gosh, I was listening to a podcast a little while ago and I forgot who said this, but when we're educated as doctors, we go through our training is doesn't really allow for much independent thinking
Mm.
until you go out into practice. So, in medical school or in college, you're told to memorize some facts, take the test, and move on. These are facts, like you have to learn them. Then you get to medical school, more facts, memorization. Then you get to residency. You say, follow the protocol, don't do from the protocol. This is what you do. Then you finish, and then you're out in the real world. And now all of a sudden, you're seeing things in ways that are different. You don't have, as much structure. You really have to think independently. And now for the first time, you have to think for yourself, in a way that's challenging. So I don't, and people have that framework. So then when they see functional medicine, that it's kind of out of the box, it is a little bit, it's a different way of looking at different way of looking at things. And I think because people have been kind of brought up in this kind of traditional paradigm, it can seem foreign. And functional medicine has not similar research that conventional medicine does, where you have these giant, well-funded studies that are just tweaking one variable and then seeing if that variable has an effect. Super nice to do for medications, right? It's the one thing that you can control. But when we're talking about functional medicine, we're talking about, addressing sleep, exercise, relationships, stress. And then we're also looking at your gut, making sure, that there's nothing else going on, that we're looking at hormone levels. So we're doing so many things at once, and then people end up getting better, right?
Yeah.
So then the pushback is often like, yeah, but you don't know what actually worked, But oftentimes the interventions in functional medicine are so low risk. And so it's like, well, I argue, sure, I'd like to know exactly what worked and what didn't work, but for now this works. And I'm not sure that I do need, a multi-million-dollar trial to figure out what exactly worked, so long as it works. Does that make sense?
It does. And I resonate with everything that you're saying. So I think that it's fantastic, and really even more excited to have you on the show right now. So this is really cool, really cool stuff. So what exactly, how do you describe SteadyMD when somebody comes to your elevator pitch?
Yeah. So I tell them it's having a relationship with a real relationship with a doctor who's really invested in your long-term health in a way that's completely virtual and accessible. So what SteadyMD really is, it's essentially having a primary care physician in your pocket. So the app, there's an app that you can text your doc. We have unlimited appointments, 1 hour long, initial intake visits, 30-minute follow-ups. And the idea is also to partner with a physician who practices a similar lifestyle. So, right, most of my patients are CrossFitters, so they understand. I mean, for goodness sake, I'm in a CrossFit affiliate, so they totally, we really jive well together from the perspective of lifestyle goals and kind of how they live their life too. So I tell people that's an element of a doctor-patient relationship that really, I think elevates the therapeutic relationship and the power of treatments, knowing that, the doctor understands your life, both from the perspective of doing the same sport, but then also has the time to get to know you. And so that I kind of explain all those different components, that it's digital, that there's a lot more time, that the doctor really understands your life and practices a similar lifestyle. And for most people, they are really, really excited about that. The only limitation, obviously, is that I can't do a physical exam, right? If I'm seeing somebody in California. So what we do is, I still encourage folks to have an in-person doctor that they can see in case of an emergency.
Yep.
Or if they have if they need a physical, maybe every couple of years, if they're generally healthy, might not be like might not be their best friend or share a similar perspective on health, but it's someone that they can get plugged into. And then I can kind of manage everything else. And a lot of the time, there's an issue too, I'll communicate with that doc on the ground, or if somebody goes to the ER, I'll call the ER ahead of time, give them a little rundown of what's going on. Mm-hmm. That way there's a very nice longitudinal kind of relationship.
Very cool. Did SteadyMD, were the founders tech people or doctors or both?
They were tech, yeah. Okay. So tech people. So
Go ahead.
Oh no, so it's kind of stemmed out of their desire to have a true relationship with a physician, rather than just seeing some random individual who might not share a similar lifestyle. I think that at the very core of SteadyMD is relationship, is the relationship between a doc and a patient, and really using that to kind of drive not just behavior change and health optimization, but also kind of have people be comfortable, know that they have someone in their corner regardless of kind of what happens.
Yeah. And what is the long-term goal for like the relationship between the patient and the doctor? Are you guys thinking like, all right, I'm working with Dani, and like Dani's going to be my man for the long term, because he knows all my stuff. Like I feel like it
Sure.
used to be that way, maybe
Right.
like when our parents were growing up, but like now it's kind of like, well, I don't really like this guy. Let's go to the next guy. Let's go see what,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned that because, that's one of the ways I explain it to people as well. It used to be, the doc was in your community. You'd see them at the grocery store. You'd see them at church. You'd see them, or all over town, and they were just a staple of your community. Or if you're sick, they'd come to your house on a Saturday, check your kids out, and make sure or stitch them up if they busted their head open or something like that. And this is really kind of bringing back that ethos, that soul of medicine, which I really thought existed in
Yeah.
medicine, but unfortunately it's kind of fading away a little bit. But we're bringing it back.
It's really cool. And I know that a lot of like the people that are connected to the CrossFit community are seeing the SteadyMD name all over the place, which is
Sure.
fantastic. And I'm happy, and excited to spread this word as well, because
Awesome.
it sounds like you guys are doing really cool stuff. Is there a
Thank
specific
you.
target market right now for SteadyMD, or is it individualized per doctor, like you said, that you try and
Yeah.
match people up, or what are you guys going after?
So yeah, it's individualized by doctor. So we have a really cool quiz if you go to our website, steadymd.com, that you'll answer a couple of questions, and then it'll pair you with 3 potential options for a doctor. So there's many different doctors on staff, so that we can kind of have something for everyone, really.
Very
So
cool.
obviously, for me, my target market is active CrossFitters, people who do functional fitness. So and then people, I think there's another kind of group of patients. They don't necessarily do CrossFit, but they kind of are looking for that more holistic, root cause based medicine for their healthcare. And that's kind of, I do want to highlight kind of what I do is not, because when people hear functional medicine, some folks look at it from the perspective of kind of functional medicine as a specialty, if you will, where you do really extensive lab testing, gut testing, nutrient testing, hormone testing. I certainly do some of that, but what I do is kind of regular primary care with kind of a functional medicine flair. Like I don't really do a lot of the advanced testing, but I have that kind of mindset. Like let's try to get to the root cause of issues as opposed to, just treating it with a medication or a procedure.
For sure. And it seems like it's really interesting and really cool, because I know that there's a lot of people that are listening and watching this podcast that are not only just general CrossFitters, but they're trying to, get to this, what we used to call regionals level, or like, the competitive portion of CrossFit.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because as CrossFit has matured, I know that you'll have some interesting stuff to say about this, but it's gone from
Sure.
like being healthy to like, all right, I'm going to go very competitive. And then there's some other space there, right? Which I don't know what your perspective is on how healthy that is. But if and when you get people like that, do you help them through managing that extra stress that comes from being a competitive athlete, whether it's CrossFit or I guess, or some other kind of sport?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I always say that to borrow a phrase from CrossFit, a little bit, the needs of, the elderly and the elite athlete vary by degree, not kind. And it's really similar in healthcare as well. So, for professional athletes, which I kind of almost consider people who are trying to do regional level, because they're spending like 4 or 5 hours, 2 hours of recovery. That's almost a full work week for some people if they're training 6 days a week,
Yeah.
So from that perspective, they need some additional support, perhaps in their kind of nutrition and overtraining management, I guess you would kind of call it to some degree.
Yeah.
But when I work with kind of people who do a higher volume, we really have to pay close attention to making sure they're not overtaxing their system. So this concept of overtraining, I kind of view overtraining very similar to this concept called, HPA axis dysfunction. Some people call it adrenal fatigue, but that's really not a great term, because that's really not what it is. But changes in your hormone levels because of too much stress on the system. So I work with folks to really optimize their sleep, to make sure that they're recovering well, that their nutrition is on point, because nutritional needs change quite a bit at the competitive level. And then dialing in, other lifestyle factors. It's not to say that with recreational athletes or people who don't work out a whole lot that I don't address that, but I always kind of look at five different domains. I was taught by one of my mentors, Nate Bergman, to always look at sleep, exercise, stress, and nutrition. And then I add actually a fifth to that, which is relationships.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the five domains that I always try to dial in with absolutely everyone. And some of those domains might get extra, attention based on what people are doing in terms of exercise.
Very cool. And so do you actually look at nutrition, or do you refer someone out for that, or how does that work? Because I know a lot of doctors I talk to don't get a ton of nutrition training.
Yeah, I do. I do look at nutrition. I kind of view it as it's a medicine, really. It's a food you eat, it's a medicine you take 3 times a day the rest of your life. So I definitely use that quite a bit, and look at macros, use my fitness pal all the time, that kind of thing. So that's part of definitely what I do. For some things, it certainly gets a little bit more complex, where I need to kind of recruit a dietitian as well to kind of dietitian on the care team to really help with that, because it can get a little bit tricky, particularly when there are, sometimes like GI diseases, like let's say somebody has Crohn's or ulcerative colitis and they're quite sick, and we really need to look at nutrition from more a detailed lens. Or if there's an eating disorder involved, then I'm going to need a little bit more support from a dietitian.
Yeah, cool. What kind of general tests, or are there general tests that you give to people on like an intake?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, it depends on who the person is, but I really am very diligent to screen people for insulin resistance. That's probably the biggest thing that I make sure doesn't happen. And a lot of people don't know that when you have full-blown diabetes, the process actually started 10 years ago. So it started with the before diabetes is pre-diabetes. Before pre-diabetes is insulin resistance, where your body isn't able to use insulin effectively, becomes somewhat resistant or insensitive to it, where your blood sugar raises to a level where it's unsafe.
Right.
So I do some tests for that, and then also do a more detailed cholesterol panel for most folks, where you're actually looking at the conventional cholesterol panel, where you have total cholesterol, triglycerides, LDL, HDL, kind of good and bad cholesterol, doesn't give you a complete picture. And what I do is a special cholesterol test, where we take a much more detailed look at those cholesterol particles. We essentially take your blood and run it through an MRI machine, and then actually you can see the different particle sizes. Not to go into too much detail, but it allows you to get a much, much better sense of what actually is going on from a cholesterol perspective. And then in turn, it also provides you with some additional information to see if you're insulin resistant. That's probably the two biggest tests. And then based on, symptoms, looking for thyroid disorder. Sometimes that's quite common in folks who are kind of overtrained. And then also, the standard blood work, like blood counts and making sure their kidneys and livers are working okay.
Cool. Sounds really, really interesting, and not like a normal general practitioner that I would go to. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah. How does this work, or does it work at all with insurance?
Yeah. So it's $100 a month. And it's that part is out of insurance. So it's kind of like a subscription fee, kind of like you would pay for a gym membership. Okay. But some people can get reimbursed through their HSA accounts.
Okay. And
what people typically do is they have a catastrophic insurance plan where they pay a lower premium, and then they use the money that they save from that, and then use it for SteadyMD. And then we also have a newer option too, where we have a partnership with a cost sharing company, where it functions similar to your insurance, where you pay for SteadyMD and you pay for this cost sharing company as well. And then finally, if people are completely without insurance, we see those folks too. And regardless if you have insurance or not, let's say insurance decides not to cover a particular test, or you want to pay out of pocket, we have a nice program too, where we can get labs at a discounted rate as well.
Okay, interesting. So it's $100 a month for SteadyMD, and then any additional test gets thrown into that bag, and you would either pay for that out of pocket or through your
Or
insurance.
run through your insurance. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
How much does a typical intake cost for somebody? Just let's say the insurance doesn't pay for it, or what's that number look like? If we're looking at a CrossFitter that comes
Yeah.
into you, that seems generally healthy.
In terms of labs, if they had to pay out of
Yeah,
pocket.
just like, hey, I want to,
Yeah.
intake.
I would say, yeah, I think the labs that I typically order probably cost something like $120, $100, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the $100 a month gets access to you, text message full time, and all that. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. So the labs are independent of the subscription fee. But yeah, so the way it works, it's $100 a month. You have 1 month to kind of decide if you like it, if it's a good fit, and then after a month, if you decide to continue, then it's a 12-month contract, or I guess an 11-month contract. And then at that point, for the full year.
Basically, you're paying $100 a month to have somebody of your expertise that you can ask questions to on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I get to be your doctor, prescribe medications, referrals, imaging, labs, all that stuff. Just like a regular doctor, but anywhere you want.
Sounds fantastic. Sounds really fantastic. Where do you see the SteadyMD headed in the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, so it's going to be more things like SteadyMD will be more accepted as the standard of care. I think most of primary care is really shifting to more of a virtual model because a lot of people aren't getting care, and a lot of people are just choosing not to go to the doctor. And this virtual option very much kind of appeals to folks. So I think from a SteadyMD perspective, I think we're going to dramatically grow because just the natural flow of healthcare at this point.
Yeah.
But where I'd like to see kind of SteadyMD go is kind of be a completely virtual practice with, dietitian services, a psychologist on staff, psychiatric physicians on staff. So kind of like a whole medical system, but completely virtual.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. Yeah. Very cool. So, is there anything about SteadyMD that we haven't talked about before we get into some of these fun questions that you think we should address?
Yeah. No, I think we covered most of it.
Okay. It sounds really cool to me. And I think that even the $100 a month doesn't sound like it's all that intimidating at all for somebody that is paying crazy healthcare costs right now, potentially. And doesn't get much feedback from doing that.
Right. So, It's true.
Yeah. Cool. So let's, as a CrossFitter and fellow, fitness nerd, these are a couple of fun questions for you that people just love to hear the answers to these. I do as well.
Sure.
What's your favorite cheat day meal?
Oh, favorite cheat day meal. There's this really good gluten-free pizza place by our house. So definitely, I'd probably say pizza. Yeah.
Cool. And so do you know what it's called? I'm a pizza nerd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's actually right down the street. It's called Town Hall, and it's a completely non-GMO restaurant. And they try to remove like as many inflammatory foods out of their menu as possible. Everything is just absolutely delicious and fresh. So anytime you're in Cleveland, you have to check out Town Hall in Ohio City. It's a really cool place.
I wish I would have known. We were there a few months ago. Shoot.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Next time.
Next time. Absolutely. Is it snowy there right now?
I think a little bit. It's more icy now. It got warm, and then it got icy and froze again. So yeah.
Cool. What's the hardest workout you've ever done?
Hardest workout I've ever done. It was actually in the 2011 games. I was on a team in 2011, and one of the workouts was carrying sandbags over a bunch of essentially obstacles. And I've never ever felt my legs burn that hard my entire life. And I think it was all the adrenaline. It was just like a I was in a totally different place, like in a totally different world. That was definitely the hardest workout I've ever done. Yeah.
Nice. What are your current fitness goals?
Just try to stay healthy at this point. So
Okay.
I had knee surgery recently, so I'm recovering from that because of a torn meniscus, kind of a chronic skateboarding injury that I've been rehabbing for like 10 years, and then finally kind of give way in the middle of a workout. So yeah, I want to, stay healthy and train and do that. As long as it stays fun, I'll probably end up doing a little bit more volume. See if I do masters, who knows? But right
Yeah.
now it's to stay healthy. Yeah.
Very cool. And do you have a particular patient that signs up for SteadyMD and you're like, yes, this is my wheelhouse. I love working with this type of person.
I mean, I don't know. I like, it's kind of a cop up, but I really like working with everyone. It's
Okay.
honestly, the rewarding part is that people are motivated and they're wanting to make a change. That to me is so invigorating as a physician. So that's the biggest thing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And last question for you.
Yeah.
We have this pretty big issue right now in the United States and the world as a whole, if you want to bunch it together, of people being overweight and obese. And I ask this question to everybody because I feel like, I get to talk to a lot of really smart people. So it's cool. And maybe at some point, everybody's thoughts will merge together and we'll have a really big solution for this. But what do you think that yourself and SteadyMD need to be doing, or what do you think that we can do as a whole to help with this obese and overweight issue that we're dealing with?
Yeah, it's a big question. Nobel Prize worthy if you figure it out. But I think it has to do with systems.
Okay.
To say that obesity is the result of a lack of willpower just isn't true. It's this mentality that I think is a little bit pervasive. It's really the system. So, for example, the food industry getting subsidized essentially by the government to produce really cheap, unhealthy food is a huge problem. Making kind of healthy food more accessible to everyone is critical from a very basic needs perspective, right? So like if you get the main things in place, like I mentioned previously, exercise, sleep, stress, nutrition, and relationships, most disease gets quite a lot better or doesn't happen in the first place. So if we get these very basic things in place, nutrition being perhaps the single most important from a public health perspective, that's going to be critical. And then from a medical community perspective, really changing the mindset or the system from one that's of throughput, of seeing people quickly, to getting to developing relationships, to have time to actually practice medicine. Because when I talk about functional medicine, I'm not trying to kind of separate myself from conventional doctors. The functional medicine really is just good medicine. All doctors know how to practice functional medicine. They all want to get to the root cause, and they all learned it in medical school, right? These aren't new facts, but we're limited by time, by the system, by the pressures to produce, the pressures to get people through the system. That's really limiting kind of healthcare as a whole, not just from a perspective of obesity. So I think nutrition, changing kind of the way medicine is practiced to actually allowing more time. And then I think the other thing is really making sure that people are plugged into good communities. So, health behavior change and health in general happens in communities, right? So that people aren't in isolation. So having people, making sure people aren't lonely. There's a huge epidemic of loneliness, particularly in the elderly. Making sure that, people have folks that they can rely on, that they have stable families, that they have people that they can reach out to. These are the things that really make a big difference. And, obesity is just one manifestation of that, of these chronic diseases, I guess you would call them in society. It's kind of a, philosophical answer to the question about the obesity epidemic. But I think the question really, when you dig into it and you peel it back, really highlights a lot of different things that are influencing the health of the country.
I love the answer, Dani. That was really, really interesting.
Sure.
One question about it. What is up with the time restraint of the medical professionals? Is it a money issue, or is there something else going on there?
Yeah. No, it's absolutely a money issue, 100%. So in order to make, to keep the lights on, you have to see a certain amount of people. The system was structured so that it was set up for fee for service. The more you did, the more you got paid. The problem is the price of healthcare and the reimbursement for what you actually do isn't appropriate. So in order for you to actually keep the lights on, particularly as an independent practitioner, if you're taking insurance, you have to see people every 15 minutes. Yeah, I mean, it's insane, right? It doesn't make sense. And it puts people in a position that that no one's happy. The physician isn't happy, the patient isn't happy. It's completely demoralizing for both parties. So I mean, the insurance system has to change as well, and the whole system is changing. I wouldn't say that it's stagnant at all. We're really shifting towards more what is called kind of outcomes based reimbursement. Where the healthier your tribe is, if you will, the more you get, the more money you keep. You don't get penalized so it's changing. But like in all big things, all big systems, it's going to take decades to change.
For sure. That sounds really interesting though. Very, very interesting. Cool. Yeah. So if people want to find out more about you or get started with SteadyMD, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, go to the website, SteadyMD.com, and there you'll be able to take the quiz. If you have any kind of detailed questions, there's always somebody on in the corner of the screen in the chat window to ask questions. And then you can go to or send an email at info@steadymd.com. Any questions that you may have there. You can find me on Instagram at Dani Urcuyo, MD at there. And then those are the ways to get a hold of me and learn more about SteadyMD.
Cool. Well, Dani, this has been awesome. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much, man.
Sure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Hey guys, that was my podcast with Dani Urcuyo of SteadyMD. It was awesome. So I don't know about you guys, but I think what SteadyMD is doing and Dani is doing is absolutely groundbreaking, and it's exactly what our what the medical community needs and what we need as people that are needing the medical community. I mean, how cool is it to be able to talk with your doctor on a regular basis and have them help you to optimize your life or help you through some sort of illness that you have so simply, without having to, make an appointment and go down the street and wait in line and all that stuff. I think this is fantastic, especially as somebody that wants to optimize and make sure that I am in peak shape at all times and keeping that in track. The system or the doctors that I've worked with in the past do not do that at all. They're totally reactive to what has been going on. So this is super, super cool. I highly recommend you check out Dani at SteadyMD, especially if you're a CrossFit athlete. See if you can work with them. I know I will be doing that for sure. If you guys want to try SteadyMD, make sure you go to allaroundjoe.com/SteadyMD. That's allaroundjoe.com/SteadyMD. This podcast was brought to you by the Get Better Project at thegetbetterproject.com, where you can get daily workouts sent to you, a very collaborative, supportive group of individuals, and basically fully customizable for your workout day. Workouts, videos of the workouts, asking questions about the workouts, nutrition advice, all that fun stuff. All you have to do is go over to thegetbetterproject.com, click on programs, and you'll see the daily workout program right there. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. You can find all the show notes for this episode at allaroundjoe.com/183. That's allaroundjoe.com/183. And make sure that you subscribe, because you can subscribe for free. Just click on the subscribe button, either at iTunes or YouTube or wherever you are watching or consuming this video. The All Around Joe podcast, where we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. I will see you